Over the past few years, we've seen a massive increase in isekai that's been adapted. Titles like That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime or even Mushoku Tensei have all been a part of this isekai boom that's occurred recently. And after taking a moment and reflecting on the sheer volume of isekai that's being produced nowadays, good or bad, I reflected on the series within the genre that really left an impact on me. And the first one that came to mind besides Mushoku Tensei was ReZero. ReZero follows the life of Natsuki Subaru, a 17-year-old NEET that on one night gets transported to another world right after exiting the nearest 7-Eleven. And after being transported to this fantasy world, he does what any logical person would do. Test if he has magic. Hey, don't look at me like that, you know we'd all try. Later on, Subaru finds out firsthand upon death that he respawns at a set point until he overcomes the issue that's causing him to die. Thus, our story begins. And let me say the story? It's fantastic. For one, I thought that the concept of forcing someone who had practically given up on life into another world and give them the ability that prevents them from dying was kind of cruel in a way. But it felt like the fantasy world combined with his return by death ability forced him out of his shell and confront things he wouldn't normally bother with before. Also, I don't think I've ever watched an anime where the protagonist reacts as human as Subaru does. Most stories would have a character that dies and respawns as some sort of Chad Dragon Ball Z move. But in ReZero, Subaru never treats each respawn as a throwaway life. Instead, he values each instance as his last and tries his best to make sure that he never has to use it again. Plus, they show the psychological toll and courage it takes for Subaru to put himself in danger each and every time. Each scenario they throw at Subaru seems to have some role in his growth as a character. And let me talk about Subaru for a second. He starts off as a simple weeb with no aspirations or will to do, well, anything, but then slowly develops into someone who's respectable with a set goal. And with that in mind, I want to say that I honestly haven't felt that a character in an anime would be as relatable as Subaru is. He laughs, cries, gets overwhelmed, and even has some moments where he's actually kind of cringe. But he learns from his mistakes and it helps him develop into a better, more useful person. The situations you see Subaru encounter are mentally taxing to say the least, and his reactions for the most part feel genuine. And that relatability is a strong component in what kept me interested throughout the whole series. I wanted to see how Subaru would overcome things or how he would approach even the most seemingly impossible scenarios, because for the most part he's just a normal human with no combat ability. At least not enough to take on most of the things he's going against. Plus, seeing Subaru near his breaking point was just really interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, the other characters are great too. Emilia, for instance, has a lot of her character growth in season 2, so for the first season she's just kind of a damsel in distress with insane magical power. I see how that can be misleading, but once she gets her character arc, we finally understand why she's been so secretive about her past and why she has a hard time confronting it. Now, I know there's always been this debate between Emilia and Rem, and even though I really want Subaru and Emilia to end up together, I gotta say, Rem is the one true waifu.
He only won because I lost.
Rem would do just about anything for Subaru in an instance, and she doesn't even care if her love is reciprocated. She is literally one of the biggest reasons Subaru has kept moving forward to this point. And that brings me to one of the most profound moments that I've ever experienced in an anime. On episode 18, after Subaru has failed time and time again to save the ones he loves, while dying in the most horrific ways, he breaks. With no hope left, he asks Rem to run away with him, offering her what she's always dreamed of. And Rem does the unthinkable and turns him down, knowing that's not what he would really want. Anyways, this whole episode, even though being just one big conversation, ends up being one of the most important and impactful in the series, showing that even though Subaru's weak, that he can always rely on others for help and he doesn't always have to shoulder the entire burden, because in reality, the things he's been through would cause a significant impact on your mental state. The man needs therapy.
Shout out mental illness.
I don't know, this episode just made a big impression on me. I just really appreciated how much we actually get to know each of these characters. It was crazy to me that even people with the slightest appearance sometimes end up having a much larger role down the road. Now, I know what you're thinking, that the whole die and resetting multiple times would get old, right? And yes, it would, but in season 2, I felt like it slowed down on using his ability compared to the first season. Or maybe it was just the significance of the character background that just overshadowed how many times Subaru actually dies. But I do generally enjoy the return by death ability as a plot element. It can seem like an OP ability in theory, but in practice, like I said earlier, it takes a major toll on your mind to go through all that trauma and pain over and over again, and it's generally one of the sole reasons Subaru gets stronger. In a sense, being forced to die and fail repeatedly has caused him to blossom into a person that was seemingly impossible for him to become before, but it also leads him to try to rely less on his ability and think things through before jumping straight into danger, which honestly really surprised me. Since when I initially watched this series back in 2016, I didn't expect this level of quality from the writing. Now onto the music, and man, this soundtrack has some generally unsettling tracks. And if you don't believe me, go listen to Call of the Witch and tell me what you think. Moving on to the animation, and it's pretty good. In season 1 I noticed some bad keyframes every so often, but most of them were few and far between. Season 2 looked fantastic though. Overall guys, if you haven't seen ReZero yet, I 100% recommend it. It's one of my favorite psychological thriller anime to date and has some really great writing. Plus, it's got a ton of potential best girls. But I want to know what you guys think. Is ReZero your favorite, or do you think it was overhyped? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It really helps out the channel. Anyways, thanks guys. Later.